Alright, the results are in for the election in Nordhausen. Jörg Prophet of the AfD failed to become the party's first mayor. He was defeated by the independent incumbent candidate Kai Buchmann by around 10 points in the second round. This result came as a bit of a surprise due to the fact that the AfD was favored or seen as the favorite in this election by most people, even in mainstream alternative media, those supporting and opposed to the AfD. And this election came a few months after the AfD won its first district administrator position in the same state in the city of Sonneberg. This was another local election where people thought the AfD was going to come to power. It was a test for the party and also the opposition or the parties opposed to the AfD to keep them out of power. And in the end, the AfD failed to win this election. There's a number of reasons why that could have happened. I think it could have been turnout issues. The AfD could have gotten complacent ahead of themselves and not got enough of their voters to come out to the polls. There's also party affiliation. Kai Buchmann was an independent. The candidate that Robert Sesselman defeated was from the CDU, so the party affiliation of the opposing candidate could have made the difference. But overall, I think the one mistake that I and many others made was basing what was going to happen on this election very closely on what happened in Sonneberg. And Sonneberg was no doubt an important election and was a very similar election, very similar dynamic, almost the exact same demographics and players involved. However, it was a different city. And I think going forward, until we want to predict these elections where it's two candidates, one from the AfD and one against them, going head to head in the second round, we're going to need to have some more of these elections to kind of understand, to kind of gauge what is going to happen, to use as evidence and data. And over the next few months and years, there's going to be more of these races. And once there's 5, 10, maybe 15, I think we can compile those and see what the overall trend is and see what the AfD's chances are at winning these elections. And, just because they were defeated here doesn't mean that they're going to be defeated again. But just because they won in Sonneberg doesn't mean that they were going to win this election easily. There still was a large block against them. The AfD, despite being the largest party in the first round, had all of the parties in the opposition, or the parties opposed to them rather, coalesce behind the opposition candidate. And that was because, of course, the AfD is a very controversial party, seen as extreme by large sections of German society. They see themselves as anti-establishment. Of course, they want to break through, but a lot of people that are against them want to prevent the party from coming to power. So it was going to be an uphill battle no matter what. And effectively, that is what happened. We saw the AfD be defeated here. But like I said, in Sonneberg, they won that election. They already set the precedent. They can win these types of elections. So it's not a huge defeat for the party, but it is a minor setback. The question I want to ask or answer in this video is whether or not the AfD is losing support. And I think there are a number of ways you can look at this. I think there are a number of signals that are going to show up, and there might be ways in which people think that the party is losing support or losing momentum, but I want to take an overall look at that and find out what's really going on. If we look at the national opinion polling, we see that the AfD is at around 21-22%, which is an increase of around 11 points from the previous result. However, if you look at Bavaria and in Hessen, the party is only gaining around 3 points. And why is that? Well, this is important to note because it might be confusing and it might appear that the AfD is not gaining the support they should be. But in reality, it's because when you look at these charts, when you look at the gains, it's based off of the previous election of that type. Meaning this plus 11% is on top or added to a result from 2021, while this 3% or 3.5 is added onto a result from 2018. The AfD was doing a lot better, was a lot stronger in 2018 than they were in 2021. So they're not gaining 11 points here because this was a different election. This was a different date when the previous election was held. If you compare this 13.7% to a poll in Hessen from 2021, then the result's not going to be 3.5, but the result would be maybe plus 8%. Not exactly 11, but a little closer to there. And another thing I want to talk about quickly is the way Germany votes in the East-West divide and also the way German states vote for their state legislature versus their federal parliament. Now, the first thing that's important to note is that in West Germany, West German states, the AfD does around 2 points lower than their national average. You see, the AfD in 2021 received 10.3% of the vote, and in West Germany, 8.2, around 2 points. And that is important to note because if you look at the West German states, we see they are much lower than what they are at the national average. But there's another important factor to note, not just the East-West divide, but also the state versus federal divide. Now, we have a good example to look at, and this was the state election for Mecklenburg-Vorpommern that happened in 2021. This is Merkel's home state. It is an East German state. It had its federal, or rather its state election, on the same day as the previous German federal election. And that meant that the same exact electorate went to the polls to vote for their state legislature and for their delegation to the federal legislature, meaning it was the same demographics, the same number of people, but there are huge differences in the numbers that they voted for both of these types of elections. The SPD won the state election with 39%. However, for the same election for the federal parliament, the SPD won only 29.1. That is a 10-point difference in the same state with the same voters on the same day. So you can see here there are clearly sometimes huge differences in the way the state votes depending on the type of election. And if you look at the AfD itself, you see they received 16.7% of the vote in the state for the Landtag and 18% in the state for the Bundestag. 1 point, 1.5, to 2 points is generally what you will see. So what you can basically do is combine that. And you will basically see that in these West German states, because they're state elections, they're doing about 2 points lower, and because they're West German states, they're doing about 2 points lower as well. And what that means is if you add 4 points to these polls, it should be aligned with what the AfD is polling at federally. And if you add 4%, this goes to from 16 to 20, and this would go from around 14 to 18. That is not exactly what the 21.6 is. It's slightly below it, but it is kind of in line with what we are seeing in the federal opinion polling, and that is why. That is why it might appear that the AfD is not gaining as much as they should. It's because these are state elections. There's also parties involved in these state elections that aren't involved in the federal elections. So the AfD might only get 14% of Bavaria, but if this same election was held for a federal parliament in the same state, they would probably get 16, 18, maybe 19% of the vote with the same electorate. And so we have this kind of illusion that the AfD might be losing support or not have the momentum that they have in the federal opinion polling, but that is why. And of course, both of these polls, the federal and state polls, going to have issues. They're not going to be completely accurate. So on Sunday, when we have the actual results from these two state elections, we will be able to see what the actual numbers are. But even these results, they might seem disappointing for the AfD. These are still increases on top of 2018, which they got really good results. In Hessen, the 13.1 was the second best result they've had so far in a West German state. So we will see what happens, and the AfD is clearly not gaining the amount of support that they were in the past. The increase of support is not increasing, rather. However, they are still steady at around 21, 22%. They have been for some months now. I don't know when that will change. Parties go through phases like this where they have large increases for even years, and then it falls before elections. So I don't think we'll know, but these state elections will be important tests. They aren't going to receive maybe 20% of the vote. They might seem disappointing for the party, but that's why I wanted to give you kind of an overview to kind of understand why there are differences and why even if the AfD only gets 13% of Bavaria, it still means that they could get 21% in the same for the federal election. But we will nonetheless see those results on Sunday. I wanted to give you guys just a brief overview of the party since they are becoming a major player in German politics, as well as a look at what happened in Nordhausen. And like I said, I didn't want to analyze this election too much because every city is different. But once we get maybe 5, 10 of these elections, I would like to compile it together, make a video, and see what the overall trend is, where the AfD breaks through to 50% and where they fall short, and why those are the case. But nonetheless, I will be doing some more videos this week once we have the elections, and those will definitely be exciting. And if you guys like this video, please share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you all for watching.